Now, once you've got the steering wheel removed from the car, you have to disassemble it. Now, it would seem as though these plastic pieces here would snap off, but they don't. They're held on with 4 Torx screws. That's another thing. The majority of Tesla fasteners are Torx, and all of them on the steering wheel. The first thing you need to do is remove this carriage that the airbag snaps down to. So you do that by flipping it around. Oh, and before we get started there, I'm going to show you something interesting here. Now you saw that I removed the steering wheel from the car by putting you saw when I removed the steering wheel from the car, I did it by putting probes into these holes. Let me show you inside the wheel what that does. It pushes, watch this wire here. It pushes that wire in and unlocks, it releases these pegs. And you have to do it on both sides because that is what releases, at the same time it releases all 3 pegs. See how when I push that in, it moves that? So that's the inner workings. Once you push rods into those holes to release the airbag, it comes out. So that's a close-up view of how you deal with that. So the next step, though, is you have to get this carriage out, and that's done by flipping the wheel over, and you have to release these plastic tabs. So what I do here is use needle nose pliers, and you just push down on these, you kind of squeeze in and push down, and they all release very easily. Flip the wheel back over, and now this carriage is loose. And once that carriage is loose, you can get to these 4 Torx screws. So I'll remove those now. Now once you've removed those 4 screws, this whole plastic assembly can come off, and that is just sort of snapped in, and what you can do is get underneath and pop it up. And same with these sides here. You just kind of tug, get your fingers under the edge, and lift, and this whole plastic assembly comes out, and then you have the raw wheel. And again, here are these release wires that release the airbag from the wheel. So, and I'll show you this. This is the control section here, and on the back side of this control section, you've got the thumb wheel controls here, and this this box. Now that box is that is the steering wheel electronic control, or ECU. I know because I took the box off already and took it apart. The circuit board says steering wheel ECU, and now you wouldn't think when you look at the wheel, you wouldn't think there's anything here. You've got the thumb wheels. You wouldn't think that they would put, why would they put anything in this location? So initially I thought, well, I can cut this off to make a flat bottom wheel, until I realized that, again, you have this electronic control unit here. Now I'm going to show you what I plan on doing to compensate for that, and I can mount that on an angle and get it to take up far less space within this area, so I can still flat bottom the wheel. And so there are 2 Torx screws, 1 on each side, to get this ECU box off, but I'm not too worried about that for now. We'll deal with that later. So we'll deal with the steering wheel here. So we'll set this aside, and now the steering wheel is this is an aluminum base, and it's an aluminum hoop that is, I'm assuming, welded at these points. I don't know yet. I have seen one other video where they removed a portion of the wheel, and there's a sort of square or I-beam aluminum section underneath some padding through here. But I do know that this area is just foam, and I know that because you can poke right through it with a screwdriver, whereas on here you can't. It's hard. So this is just hard foam rubber. This section has foam rubber, but it's aluminum forged from this or cast from this plate up to the steering wheel hoop. So the next thing is to begin removing the upholstery. So I guess we'll start Well, we'll start at a seam here and work our way around. I don't know that I need to worry about protecting this upholstery because I'm not going to reuse it, but I'm going to follow the seam anyway. I think it's easier to cut thread than it is to cut the upholstery itself. So it appears that they've used a mild adhesive to hold the wrap down to the foam rubber here. So let's see, and you'll notice that where the stitching seam is, they've put a relief in the foam padding. It's kind of interesting to see. So there's the upholstery, and just for grins I'm going to set that aside. I'm not sure if it'll come in useful for any kind of pattern later on or not, but there we've got the stripped steering wheel. Now you can see here the foam rubber is actually molded right into this section here, and since I'm not using much of this, I'm going to trim this off, but I'm not going to trim the whole thing off because I am going to use a small portion of this. So let's see, we'll go ahead and just make a rough cut here, and I can trim it down to final size later. Obviously, using a sharp utility knife, you need to be extra careful not to slip off of what you're cutting and cut into yourself. So there we've got that section cut away, and again, this will be all finished all nice when the wheel gets reupholstered. So now, see, I'm going to take the bandsaw and just cut the wheel off up here to get a view of the inside of it. Alright, so you can see here it's a U channel of aluminum inside the foam padding, and so that hoop continues, but again it is not attached here. I'll cut this section all the way off so you can see what I mean here. So you can see that's just foam padding. There's no actual wheel attachment from here going supporting it to the hub. It's merely at the arms. So the next thing, since I'm making a new hoop, is to decide on, do I cut this all the way down, or do I reuse this portion of the wheel? Alright, so there's sort of a rough idea. Now ideally what I would love to do is bend these sides in slightly. They're my other 20s. I just had them powder coated.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Anyway.
Well, enjoy your day.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
We're trying to 70s tonight.
So that was a neighbor of mine actually asking me about the wheels on my car. I love it. He's a car guy, and just sold a V8 BMW, and just great guy. So anyway, here's the wheel, and this is sort of the general idea, and I'm not 100% sure at this stage of the project if I'm going to keep just the stock wheel steering wheel hoop grips here, or if I'm going to fabricate my own. I think I'd like to try and keep these and just put a flat bottom on myself. So I've got this 1-inch aluminum tube that I could add across the bottom, and so I'm trying to decide if I want to go that route or not. I just took the foam rubber in this area to the belt sander and belt sanded it down. You can see that it responds well to the foam rubber there. So I'm going to go ahead and round these areas off here as well. right, so I took the all the edges to the belt sander there to smooth them off, and so I'm not sure if that's my permanent wheel, but or if I want to put a cross support here along the bottom. I'm not quite sure yet. I think I'm going to cut this off to mate and see how it looks. So we'll do that next. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going to unwrap this harness so I can rotate this control module because it will fit better in the steering wheel. So let's see here. Need to be very, very careful in how I do this. I'm going to be very, very cautious here. Make sure I don't cut a wire. So I'm cutting along the length of the wire and to catch the edge of the fabric here. This is very, very, this fabric tape makes the harness extremely stiff, and I want to rotate this and it just doesn't want to twist around. So I'm just unwrapping it in this one section here. It's wrapped tightly to keep the wires out of the way of the airbag assembly, but again, it means that I can't rotate this easily. So I just want to separate it, unwrap it in this area just enough to free up these wires to be able to rotate this module around, twist it 180 degrees, and there we go. There's the twist that I was looking for. And I'm going to pull this. So there's the plastic box, and there's the ECU. You can see it's a lot smaller without the box, and I need every bit of space I can get. And what I will do is electrically insulate this from anything, but it does lay in a foam pad here, but I will electrically insulate it from anything else in the wheel. So let's see, the airbag posts snap down there. And here is the ECU. So another option is to flip it this direction, but you can see that the wires are quite short. I would really have to unwrap the entire thing. So, and maybe I will unwrap more of it, but it looks like there'll be enough room to get it in there. But I do believe I'm going to have to continue the unwrapping process to route the wires in a completely different way. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting this fabric off by finding the direction that the wires are running so I can slice between two wires and keep from damaging the harness. Steps like these, you really need to take your time and be very careful. You'll notice that I'm cutting near my finger, and it would be very easy to cut my finger, but I'm not really putting much pressure. I'm allowing the blade to do the work. If I were pushing hard, it would be easy to skip off the harness and hit my finger. Now once I find the final position of the wiring, I can go ahead and rewrap this harness. That's not a problem at all. So there's the flat bottom look. Now what would be nice about this is, if I can hold that up in place, is I'd be able to rest my hand there rather than holding the bottom. So that's what I like about that. So not 100% sold on that though. So what I'm doing here is test fitting this circuit board as tight up into the wheel as I can get. So you can see I took the airbag and placed it in place. So what I'm doing here is getting the steering wheel control module, control unit, to mount up as flush to the steering wheel as I can. So I cut away this foam rubber, and I cut a relief right here using my Dremel with with the drum sander, and the circuit board, the wires will nestle down in there, and you can see that it's down quite low. There's plenty of clearance with the airbag, and and then what I'll do is make a simple cover to go over this area here, and I will electrically insulate this. I don't know if the plastic housing will fit on it or not. If not, I will surround it in foam. They used foam inside the cover, so I may just stick foam sticky tape around it and wrap it to electrically insulate it, although there's nothing, it's all plastic and foam in here, so I'm not too worried about that shorting out. But that will tuck the wheel up very, very, very small in that area. And then I also trimmed the plastic trim ring off. That protrusion that was down here I cut off. So now I'm going to assemble this, test assemble it to see how that board fits in. So there's the wheel test assembled, and you can see the profile of it, and that this the board fits really nice up inside there. In fact, I might be able to tuck it behind this plastic trim. Let's take a look and see here. So yes, it even fits behind this piece of plastic there. All right, so I took a break, and we have a storm front moving in. You can see it there. So I had to load the quad back up on the workbench. This is where it lives. I'm finishing it for a client. So you'll have to bear with me here. I just have my limited little amount of space here on the workbench to work on this, but I wanted to finish up the flat bottom portion of the steering wheel. So there's the steering wheel. This is a thick wall piece of aluminum tube that I have, 1 inch in diameter, and that's going to be installed at the bottom of the wheel. What I'm going to do is, to get that installed, is I'm going to weld flat plate onto both beveled ends here with a hole drilled, and the end here of the end of the steering wheel, don't know if you can see this here, but the end of the steering wheel, if you pull back on this foam, it just so happens right where I cut the wheel off, that's actually blocked off with aluminum through this section, so I can drill right into that spot and tap a hole on both sides of the steering wheel here. So this bar will be screwed to the base of the steering wheel with a hole drilled and tapped at each side, and again I will be welding a flat plate. This is awkward here, doing this with one hand. I'll be welding a flat plate onto this beveled section on each side of this bar, and then and a screw will be fed through, and I'll open up a little opening here to feed the screw in. So this part will be screwed to the steering wheel. So it will be technically removable, although I'll probably just leave it on semi-permanently. But so that's what I'm working on now. I will be cutting pieces of aluminum and TIG welding them on, and then I will grind that weld off nice and smooth. You can hear equipment running in the background, but so just running the tap in the ends. I've already tapped this hole. So, and I'm tapping at full depth, and so that way I can use a long bolt and get very tight, very strong junction at that area, because it's going to be permanent. So. All right, so there it is. What I did is I cut a little flat disc of aluminum for each side here, and then TIG welded that flat disc to the bevel on this tube, and you can see this this scribe mark here. I filed that in. That's L for left, so the left side of the wheel, to make sure that if I take it off I don't flip it the wrong way. So you can see down inside there is a screw, an Allen head screw holding down each side firmly into the wheel, and each screw is threaded about this deep in. So it's very positive, clamping force with those screws. So, but it is a very, very close distance between the center where the steering column is and the bottom of the flat spot of the wheel, as well as up to this surface here where the wheel is cut off. I wanted to make sure that it looked relatively centered in the car, that it didn't look either too high or too low. And so the crossbar is very parallel. It's 2.7 inches from this down to the flat spot here on both sides, pretty much exactly. There's a little bit of an optical illusion going on with lighting where it looks like it's shorter here, but it's actually not. It's sort of the way the lighting is in the room. But that's the wheel, rough built. And so, yeah, I'm thrilled and can't wait to get it upholstered and installed in the car. All right, so here is the wheel completed as far as upholstery and mechanical modifications, except for one thing, and that is a little cover here to cover over the steering wheel ECU. So it will be down in this area here, so I need to make a simple cover to go over this area to protect it. So I'm going to go ahead and make that now. So what I'm doing here is making a small cover. Now this is carbon fiber, and it is, I don't know if you can see the weave there or not. I have scraps of carbon fiber laying around, so this will go over the wheel in that spot to cover up where the steering wheel ECU is located. So I'm just basically trimming this down to make it look nice and fit properly. Now, on the carbon fiber is conductive, electrically conductive. So on the back side, I've got it taped off, and I'll also put tape on the circuit board where it contacts it to prevent any electrical shorting. So anyway, we'll go ahead and what I'll be doing is mounting it to the steering wheel by drilling a few holes, and to use some small self-tapping screws into the hard rubber here, as well as some adhesive to hold it down. All right, well, there's my lower panel, and I trimmed it to size, I glued it down, and then I drilled holes into the rubber and slid tiny nails into those holes and glued them in place. So, and it's something you'll never see unless the wheel's upside down and you're looking at it from the top, but decent little cover. And yeah, so looking forward to putting it on and just, you know, getting everything ready to put in the car.